Hello everybody, this is going to be a bit exciting. Today on the channel, it's new motorbike day. So, what have I bought and why? Well, all this and more in today's episode of JayEmm Friends. If you've been following my journey back onto two wheels thus far, you'll have seen this, my grandfather's Triton. He rode it to work as a teenager in the 1960s, but it's been off the road since 1995. I inherited it in 1999 when he passed away, and this year I made it my mission to get it back on the road, which I am very proud to say I have now done. And as soon as the Triton roared into life, I knew I had to get back into biking in a proper way. But there was an issue. You see, though it was a performance bike of its day, technologically speaking, this thing is from the 1950s, and with no wing mirrors, no indicators, it's a fairly intense thing to ride. More than that though, it is a family heirloom, and if anything were to happen to it, I don't think I could forgive myself. So I figured fairly early on, I needed something a little more usable and modern to go alongside it to allow me to enjoy biking on a more frequent basis. So then, what is it that I've bought? Well, let's show you. This is my brand spanking new KTM 1290 Super Duke R Evo. And it dawned on me earlier, this is actually the first bike I've ever bought myself. You see, the last one that I owned was a Gilera Runner, which my dad bought for me as a 17th birthday present. Every other bike I rode since then was, with very few exceptions, one that he had. So this really is the second bike that I've ever been able to call mine, and the first one bought with my money. This is actually quite a big deal, and at this point in time I'd like to say a massive thank you to all of you, regardless of whether you've been watching the main channel, JayEmm on Cars, which has given me the money to do nut stuff like this, or you've been watching stuff over here at JayEmm and Friends, because the support I've received from all of you in terms of getting back onto bikes has been amazing, and it's genuinely inspired me to keep going, and I'm glad that I have, because I'm having a whale of a time. But remember, these things only happen because you keep watching. So if you're enjoying the content, make sure you've subscribed, because it makes a huge difference to a growing channel like this one. And I also want to say a massive thank you to BeMoto, the bike insurance specialists, because they have agreed to become our first sponsor. And I'm happy to partner with them, because it just so happens that I know the people behind the scenes and can tell you they are genuine bikers. And regardless of whether your dream ride looks like this or that, they will have an insurance product to suit you at a price that hopefully will work. We have a dedicated JayEmm hotline, which will be in the description down below. But in any case, if you get in touch and you have found them through this channel, please be sure to tell them, because we'll get a small donation from them in return, and that money will go directly into creating more two-wheeled content. So a big thanks to them for supporting the channel. So then, how was it that I arrived at a KTM? Well, the funny thing is, they weren't even on my radar to begin with. I tried bikes from a whole range of manufacturers, like Yamaha, BMW, Ducati, even the likes of Moto Guzzi and Indian. But a KTM just wasn't something I considered, until my good friend Chris said that actually I should give the range a look. So he took me to his local dealer, JayEmm, over in Braintree, and showed me around. Unfortunately, we turned up on an open day and they were pretty busy. But even so, the salespeople still took the time to talk us through some of the range, and I had a sit on a couple of bikes and thought, I like that blue one. I'll investigate that a little later on. Fairly early on, I decided it was likely going to be a twin that I wanted to buy. Though I appreciate a decent triple or four-cylinder, I've always preferred the torquey power delivery of a big twin and the sound that they make. More specifically, I have always really lusted after a V-twin, and maybe it's for that reason that the first bike I test rode was a Ducati Monster. As soon as I'd ridden that, I figured that was likely going to be the engine for me, if not necessarily the bike. The KTM's engine is something else. It's called the LC8, which stands for Liquid Cooled 8 Valve. It is a 90-degree twin and makes here 180 horsepower and 140 newton meters of torque. That's about 103 pound-foot. Or to put it another way, this engine has almost as much torque as an early Mazda MX-5, but another 70 horsepower in something that weighs a fifth what that does. I love my engines, and this one is a technological tour de force. It has 2 spark plugs per cylinder, 2 injectors per cylinder, with the second one kicking in at 5,000 RPM for that warp speed experience. It also revs to 10,000 RPM, in spite of the fact it's a fairly large capacity bike. It's also a stressed member, being an integral part of the chassis, which is not as uncommon in the bike world as it is in the car one, but still, it's very cool. The chassis itself has also been revised for this 3rd generation bike, and the beautiful orange trellis frame, I think, is a work of art. Also, I will admit it, very Ducati-esque and made the KTM a relatively easy sell. It's also another one of many reasons why I went for this bike over and above the fairly obvious it's quite quick. Yes, that's pretty, but that frame, it's also perfect for mounting cameras. Another detail that made me really fall in love with the Super Duke was the air intake, which is located here between the headlights, meaning that when you're sat on the bike, you can hear it pulling in big gulps of air. That means that even though, like everything else modern, it has to meet fairly strict emissions and noise regs, it still sounds interesting, particularly when you're perched on it. More than that though, yes, it's a very powerful bike, but it also has a massive range of safety and performance aids to help you tame that power. So you have traction control, ABS with a 6-axis inertial measurement unit, the IMU, that means it knows whether you're leant over or not and will give you only the stopping power that it thinks you want. You also have on this model, the Evo, an adjustable semi-active electronic suspension, which is important because one of the issues I have with the Super Duke is that it's a very tall bike. At a seat height of some 835mm, it's more or less the same as the BMW 1250 that I dropped on the test ride, and had actually initially cancelled my ride of this because of that, until I was convinced by the sales guy to try it because the Evo model, having the semi-active suspension, has a mode whereby it can lower itself ever so slightly, making it just that little bit more approachable. And he's right. Though it's still a big bike for me, it is one that I can just about manage. And I like that. I feel like it's a bike that I can grow with. And yet still, with all the safety aids on, it's both comfortable and also not intimidating to explore the performance. And make no mistake, this is a seriously powerful and capable machine. In fact, it's the 2nd most powerful bike I've ever ridden. The only one that had more was the BMW M1000R. That's something like 207. This, though, has more torque. But in spite of all of that, it was also one of the friendliest and most approachable bikes to ride. High seat aside, this thing is an absolute darling. All that performance will only appear if you ask it. Take, for example, this throttle. They've sharpened it up by 7%, and KTM's literature will tell you this is the beast. It's a wild machine. If you open your garage door, you'll find it's been reading dirty magazines and smoking your cigarettes. But twist this, and it's actually a delight. The roll-on performance is beautiful. It's so smooth, so approachable. Likewise, the brakes, they are amazing. Easily some of the best on any machine, bike or car that I've ever used. The feel you get through this lever is brilliant. These are way better than the Ducati Monsters, and this is way nicer than that on the Indian, both of which had quite a bit less power. Then the suspension, it has multiple different modes. It's lovely, it's nice, it's comfortable. Though it is a capable bike, it's also one I don't feel like I'm being punished for riding at slow speeds. This has the Tech Pack, which is another £1,000 or so RRP that includes a few extra modes, like the ones I need to lower it, and also the Quick Shifter, which I've got to say I rather like. When I was last riding 10 years ago, quick shifters were something you had on race bikes, not road bikes. Now, just about everybody seems to be doing one, and I like it. I tried the smaller 890, and actually, that's a brilliant bike. Potentially the one that I should have bought. but this is what I fell in love with. I did notice a few differences between the two, including the fact that the seat on the 890, while lower and narrower, and therefore a little easier to get on, wasn't anywhere near as comfortable. Plus, that was a parallel twin, not V, and drew its air in from the side, as opposed to this being a big V with air intake up the front. And all of the switchgear felt just a little lower rent. Everything on it felt just a touch cheaper. I have plans to do some mods to this, tart it up a little bit, as is the motorbike way, but for now, I am enjoying it in standard guise, of which a big part of the appeal was this satin blue paint. There are two colour schemes for the 1290R and Evo, one of which is this, that they call black, and then there is one which is silver and orange, which they call orange. Why didn't you call them blue and silver? They've both got orange, and they've both got bits of black. KTM, I suppose. My eventual shortlist came down to about 4 bikes. This, the Ducati Monster, the Indian FTR 1200S, and the Moto Guzzi Mandello V100S. The Ducati I really liked. It was the bike that I'd always lusted after. I still want one, but I couldn't find exactly the right one. There were a whole bunch of different models that I really wanted to try because I wanted to buy the one that was going to last me, and it just didn't happen. However, they're still out there. I don't have to rush. One day a Ducati will be mine. The Indian then, I really liked. It's very different and I enjoyed it. Sure, the throttle was a little snatchy, but it was an easy bike to get on and an easy bike to ride. However, it was heavier than this and quite a bit down on power. Though that shouldn't really bother me, it did, for reasons I will get onto shortly. The Moto Guzzi then was really the bike that also I think had the best chance of actually making it to my garage. It's beautiful, it's interesting, you don't see all that many of them, it has a delightful V-twin engine, and though again quite a bit down on power compared to this, it still had enough. However, the Moto Guzzi is more of a sort of sports tourer, and I'm very aware of the fact that for likely at least the next year, what I'm going to be doing on my bikes is heading out for an hour or so when the weather is right. I do not have any immediate plans to do any big trips. So, the Indian was ruled out, partly because of its performance, heavier and less power, but also because it wound up actually being worse value. You see, these RRP are £18,500. The Indian and the Moto Guzzi both 15,750. So quite a difference. And at 18.5 grand, I couldn't justify one of these. I'd started off looking for bikes at about 6 or 7 grand. That quickly grew to about 10, but I didn't really want to spend any more because I did not want to finance a bike. For me, they are a pure toy, and as an occasional thing, I just can't justify it. I don't make anywhere near enough content on bikes, and we don't get the revenue from it, simply put, to justify doing that. However, KTM were doing a deal on these. First off, if you did take the finance out, they were going to double your warranty from 2 to 4 years. And given the reputation that KTM have for reliability, that sounded like a good thing. In fairness, I never knew they had a reputation for being unreliable, but I found out that they do. And as it happens, less than 60 miles in, this has thrown me an error. Hopefully a small one, it'll get sorted. But it's annoying nonetheless. The other thing was that when I first went to look at these, they were offering £1,000 off the 890 and £2,000 off the 1290, making this then £16,500. But when I went back to JayEmm the second time and asked if that deal was still on, they told me it had actually been upgraded to £3,000 off. Likely due to a combination of the fact this is an old model now, it's going to be replaced next year, possibly by the 1390, and it's been a rubbish summer for weather. I expect all bike brands have suffered a bit here in the UK. So, the deal was there. This bike, £15,500. The big difference though was the dealer experience. For the Indian, I went to Crazy Horse in Bury St Edmunds, a well-loved dealer and one that I've known for a long time because I grew up in the town. However, despite the fact I had booked an appointment there and turned up at the allotted time, it just felt like the sort of place where nobody was there to greet you. I didn't know where the sales department was, who the salesperson was. And when I spoke to them, they were lovely, friendly, very helpful. But I'm new to this sort of stuff. Well, essentially new, and I need a lot of help. I need people to talk to me, I need people to explain stuff. Over at KTM, the guys there, Ben in particular, were fantastic. They took all the time they needed. I remembered that when I'd first gone there, it had been on an open day. That's the worst possible time to get any information out of anyone. They were super busy, yet still, they found time for me and my friend. They talked to us, they explained things, I booked an appointment to come back, visited them a number of times subsequently, and every single time they were superb. Took all the time they needed. When I've emailed, they've gotten back to me. They were an absolute delight. In the end, it came down to a choice between this and the Moto Guzzi. The big difference was the financing. I decided, you know what, if I did finance this, I'd get the deal on it, which I would hate to have missed, and I can pay the finance off fairly soon. I've put in a large deposit, so it'll be cleared out possibly by the time you even see this video. However, the difference between said finance was something like 9 percentage points, which is massive. Only 3.9% on this, which meant that essentially, if I do want to keep the finance running for a little bit, the interest payments are very, very low. And so I decided I wanted to become a KTM owner. The only question remaining really is that now that I've got it, what do I do with it? And for that, I'll hand over to you. Please hop into the comment section and tell me, where should I go? What cafes and places do I need to visit? I want to take this bike out. I want to do as much with it as I possibly can. Over winter, miles are likely going to be restricted. I've got to put about another 500 on them before I can get the running in service done. And then hopefully next year, I'll be able to thoroughly enjoy being a motorbiker once again. So, all that remains to be said, for now, is a big thanks to all of you involved, particularly the staff over at KTM and all the other dealers that I visited. I'll finish this video with a little montage of what it's like to ride to whet your appetite. So, for now, bye-bye.